Hello, this is Gary Flisspart. I distribute and use every day a live boot custom Linux operating system version that's based upon the Debian 9 stretch operating system. I personally select a set of applications and libraries to go on this distribution so that I can plug the live boot operating system into a computer, run a Linux operating system without making any commitments to the underlying computer. I don't have to install anything, I don't change the hard drive, I don't affect Windows in any way, and I can use it to do pretty much anything I need to do. What you see in this array here is pretty much everything that you need to do this job to start from scratch if you've never done it before. You can download one of my GLFPE images. GLFPE stands for GLF Programming Environment. GLF are my initials. But you can also build this from scratch yourself using the same configuration files I use and the built-in function that Debian provides to build a new operating system live boot image. They call it the live build package, and this tutorial is going to demonstrate how to do that from scratch using Windows to start with. You'll need a few things. One of the first things you'll need absolutely, and you'll need to do something about it if you don't have it, is you need a live internet connection, preferably hardwired, that is fast enough. You don't have to have huge bandwidth, but you have to have reasonable bandwidth. This is an internet speed test of what I have here, just to show you what I have available. This is considered broadband. It was originally specified at something like 60 megabits per second. I believe my router may be limiting me to somewhere more like 45 megabits per second, but it's still a reasonable download speed. If you don't have a reasonable download speed, you're not going to want to do this. So if you're going to try this, make sure you have a reasonable download speed. Go someplace where you can get it. This just demonstrates reasonable download speeds. The first step, which I had to do some time ago, and you can do it yourself. You can take advantage of the configuration files I've already built later, but first and foremost, you have to get a runnable version of a compatible operating system. Now, I based the GLFPE on Debian Mate. The latest version is version 9. That's what I base it on. So the configuration files are compatible with that. So the first step you would have to do is find, I've typed into Google Debian Mate download. You're right here to Debian Live Install Images. You're looking for a DVD USB hybrid ISO image. I'm going to demonstrate this using the i386 image. It's most applicable to the most machines, at least at this time. If you have an AMD 64 type machine, it'll still run it. If you have an Intel, there is a possibility it won't run the AMD 64 if it's older. Newer ones probably will, but as I said, it's more universal to use the 386 version, which is really a 686 version nowadays. Anyway, I'm looking for, in this list, Debian Live 9.3.0-i386-mate.iso. That is the current release of the official Debian Live OS. It's the foundation of how I built the GLFPE, so we'll download that. I'm now starting the download. This is a reasonable download speed here. It says 6 minutes left. I'm not going to waste your time watching the download, so I'll resume the video when it's done. Okay, the download is finished, so we're going to move on. I highly recommend that when you download an ISO file to run an operating system, it's a very large file, you want to be assured that it hasn't been changed. So you want to see the signatures for the checksums for the file to compare against it to make sure you actually got what you thought you got. Within the same directory here, you'll find md5 sums. If you bring that up, you'll see this list for each of the operating systems, which includes the mate.iso here. This long number here is the checksum, the md5 checksum that applies to that file. Now, you'll need a utility to be able to run it. It's not built into Windows. This is Windows 10. Microsoft, there are other places to get such a utility. Microsoft does make one available. So if you put in md5 sum Windows, Google will send you to how to compute the MD5 or SHA sum hash values for file support in Microsoft. So this is a Microsoft reference. If you trust Windows, you might as well trust Microsoft. But they show you the information, including how to use it and how to get a hold of the file. If you click on this support article, it will describe the FCIV utility, file checksum integrity verifier is what they call it. You can download it from there. Since you're on Windows 10, I'll put it in the same place I put the other one. It's downloaded that file, so now I'll have to install it. Now you see the fciv.exe utility there. We have both files in the same directory. The ISO file, if I sort by date, I have the Debian mate thing there and the fciv utilities in the same directory. So if I get back to this directory with a command prompt, I can run this utility. What I'm going to do is do a Windows key R, run cmd.exe. That'll bring you up a command prompt. The command prompt allows you to type in the command line to do the job. You need to know what that is. So I'll look at the previous article that described it. And there's the command line. So I'll type that in. I need to know the name of the file. So I'll do a dir star.iso. Oh, I have to change to the K drive. That's where I put it. Okay, I now have, I see the ISO file. I see another one that I had put on there earlier. But I see the one that I need, and since I have the instructions here, SCIV -md5 or no, I don't need the SHA1, I just need the md5. I need the name of the file, Debian live 9.3.0-i386-mate.iso. It's running a checksum. It'll take a little while because it's a big file, but it'll calculate the sum. Meanwhile, I'll go back to where I had left the sums. This here is the one we're looking for. 98BCC5A87, so forth. That's exactly the number that I see here. That's the important thing. You should get exactly the same number. In most cases, if it's wrong, it won't even be close. But if it's right, it'll go all the way across with all the same digits. So, this is the file that Debian said it was, so you can trust it. So, at this point, we have downloaded an ISO file that has the contents we need. The next step is put it into a format that we can use. How do we create a workable operating system from this ISO file? Well, there are multiple methods. If you've installed VirtualBox, you can run a virtual machine using this ISO as a startup. You can boot from this ISO in the virtual machine, and you can use that if you have installed VirtualBox to do that. VirtualBox is kind of large and complicated. I won't go into it at this point. It's not really necessary, and it actually makes the process I want to discuss more complicated, because you have to set certain things up carefully to be able to actually communicate with USB sticks and things like that. Also, some computers, including this laptop here, actually can't run a 64-bit version of the operating system within the virtual machine because it's got a cheap microprocessor that lacks the facility. It'll work on a 32-bit, so I could demonstrate here, but I won't at this time. I'll show you the two other methods. The first one, the easiest one, if you have a DVD reader, DVD writer and reader, you can write the ISO file to the DVD. If you don't have a DVD writer, you can actually get an external DVD writer like this one here. You can get them for somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 or so nowadays. So it doesn't have to be a stopper that you don't have a DVD writer. DVDs make the process simpler, but they run slower. DVDs take a while to read from. If you can cut the thing to a USB stick, it'll run faster. But for that, you'll need something to do that job, and I'll go into that after I demonstrate how to make the DVD. The first thing you'll need is a DVD writer, as I said. I have one built into this machine. You'll need DVD plus R CDs. You'll need a fresh pack. You'll at least need some that work, that have to be empty. And you put a fresh one into the machine and bring it up. Takes a few seconds for Windows to notice that it has the DVD in it. Then it's a matter of what can you do with it. Okay, we have successfully created the ISO file, and we verified that its checksum is correct. We now need to burn it to a DVD. I had a little bit of an odyssey that doesn't show up on the video. I had to find out why I had a problem with this. This is Windows 10, and according to the manual, you're supposed to be able to right-click on this and see a burn image item. Well, I didn't have it, and it took me a while to find out why I didn't have it. I have the ISO extension associated with 7-zip, and I like it that way most of the time. But if I want to get to the burn menu, I have to at least temporarily do this. I go into the right click, it says open with, choose another app. I go down here and I click Windows Explorer, and always use this app to open ISO files. Okay. That will try to mount the disk. You'll see the contents of what's in that ISO image. But because I've done that, if I now right click, I now get a burned disk image. So, given that I've already inserted the DVD, a blank DVD, into the drive, I should be able to burn the disk image from the ISO right here. It sees it, sees the disk burner. If I click burn, I could verify the disk after burning. I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm now burning to the disk. That takes a little while. We should see the progress bar start to move sometime soon. But I'm going to go ahead and pause the video until it gets farther along. Okay, the disk is finished burning, and it's ejected it from the machine. It's always a good idea to label your disks so you don't have to sort through a bunch of blank disks to figure out which ones aren't blank. So, alright, Debian 9. On this disk, that's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the drive, because one thing we're going to do with this now is test that it works. Since the disk has been burned, the whole idea now is to reboot the machine and then try to boot from that CD, the DVD. The first thing I have to do is get into the BIOS quickly before it tries to boot Windows. Okay, the F2 key gets me BIOS on this machine. I go over to the boot menu and it says UEFI is selected. I'll change it to select Legacy BIOS, in which case now it will not be able to boot Windows. Exit Save Configurations. Now if it tries to boot now with nothing ready to boot in the machine, you'll get a screen that pretty much tells you it can't boot. I can do a Control-Alt-Delete and start again, and it asks for F12 to change the menu. Okay, at this point I can go ahead and pop the drive in, hit CD-ROM. Okay, at this point it's going to try to boot from the DVD. And there you have it, the initial menu screen for booting Debian 9. Debian GNU Linux Live kernel 4.9.0-4-686. It tells you, 686 tells you that it's a 32-bit system. There are other items on the menu, including installers, none of which matter at the moment. Don't use the installer unless you actually want to install it. If you want to just run it and try it out and leave no effect behind, you run the first item on the menu, Debian GNU Linux Live. You hit enter, and it will start to boot Debian 9 in the official release form. This is Debian Mate 9 in its official release form. Now, a boot from a DVD is slower than a boot from a USB stick because the DVDs are inherently slower access. But you can run all the applications from the DVD that you can run from the ISO because it's loading the file system for Linux from a read-only medium. You can't change anything on them. And even if it were booting from USB, it would do the same thing. It wouldn't change anything in the system. Every time you boot, you get the same original boot. But when you're using the OS, it does tricks to allow changing files within the file system you see, because it overlays RAM onto that, and it uses RAM instead of disk to save things when you're in a live boot mode. As long as you don't run out of RAM in the process, you can do pretty much anything you want. When you reboot, all that's gone because it was only in the RAM to begin with. Now, by default, Linux machines use the UTC, or Greenwich Mean Time Zone, GMT, when they start up, because as it boots, it doesn't know anything about your location. By default, Linux machines store time in the system as Greenwich Mean Time instead of local time. Windows, by default, stores it as local time. So there is something I always do when I start the system up to make sure it's looking at the local time zone. So right now it's saying it's 1607, but it thinks that's UTC. At any event, I get if I click on the time, I get a menu, a calendar, and a locations item on the button. When I do that, I can edit locations and add your actual local location. This happens to be around Louisville, so I'll use Louisville Bowman Field. The advantage of that is I can get weather information on the screen. I look at the general thing here. I can show the format of that. The show temperature. If I go to weather, I can say in degrees F and speed in miles per hour. So I do close. Now I have to go over and actually set Louisville time zone, but notice it'll set it to 11:08 EST instead of the 16:08, because we're 5 hours behind Greenwich. Now this happens a lot, but it's nothing to worry about. Sometimes when you set the clock, it says clock is quit unexpectedly, you just reload. At any event, now it says 11:08 up here. It'll eventually display temperature when it finally picks it up from on field. This system should be using a live build GLFPE image and upgrading all the applications on it from a DVD. But before we go on, I want to show the alternative that you could do with a USB stick instead of a DVD. I'm going to shut the system down, system, shut down, and you will see that we'll go through an unbooting process here and eventually shut the machine off. Okay, on a later video, or on later parts of this video, I'll show you how to do it from a USB stick.